Hi everybody, it's Dr. Chabot, and in this video we're going to be talking about something called self-inductance, which is going to introduce us to the idea of a circuit element called inductors. So let's go ahead and just set this up by looking at a loop. And I'm just going to I'm not going to draw a solenoid just to start. Well, we'll end with the solenoid, but just sort of keep the picture simple. And we just have some loop, and let's say that the current is flowing through this loop, right? So if we know what's happening, as you know, we've navigated these modules, we know that currents create magnetic fields, right? So that there's now some B field, and if we do our right-hand rule, inside all of this, there's some B field that, you know, it's varying in strength in this case, so it's not our ideal example that we'll do mathematically, but conceptually it makes a nice picture. So it creates this B field inside, right? And so that means here that we would have that there is a magnetic flux through this loop. So the current kind of, you know, makes it induce its own magnetic field. That own magnetic field creates its own flux. And so then that flux equation, right, and we can kind of call that like an induced flux, kind of getting used to the name that we're going to have for inductors, right? So this induced, self-induced flux is going to then be given by just that kind of messy B dot dA, because I don't have a uniform magnetic field. But this B here depends on the current, right? So what that means then is essentially a key takeaway of this kind of walkthrough is that how much magnetic flux something makes, self-induced magnetic flux, depends directly on the current that's flowing through it, right? Bigger current, you'd imagine you'd have, you double the current, you might double the flux, right? Depends directly on the current and on other geometric properties. So on other geometric properties of the loop. So is there a way to relate how much flux something gets, something self-induced flux, based on its properties? In the same way that we could talk about, is there a way to talk about how much charge something could hold based on its properties? That was capacitance, right? So the relationship between our magnetic flux that's self-induced, I'm going to stop writing that eventually, and the current is my inductance. And this is our self-inductance. We are going to drop, again, the whole self part because we don't cover mutual inductance in this course for those that have seen mutual inductance. But we're just introducing self-inductance. So if I have a loop or something like that, how much current it gets is going to be directly proportional to how much flux is created. And then how much flux is created is going to depend on the geometry things. So we can define inductance here. Inductance we're going to define as a capital L. So L is going to be equal to, well, first of all, the number of loops matters, right? So the more loops, the more, you're going to be able to have, this effect. And then times the magnetic flux that it creates itself when there's some current flowing. So I'll kind of write that out. This is the flux the loop creates in itself when this current I, so when a current I, flows through it. So that's where the self part of the self-inductance comes in. So this looks at first like it's going to depend on current. but it does not. So this is our definition, right? This is our definition. And then I want to recall capacitance because it's a good thing to think about here. Recall capacitance was Q over delta V. And it makes it seem like capacitance depended on voltage. But I could just hand you capacitors and they just have a capacitance, right? So the capacitance was just the how much charge can something hold for a given delta V. It ended up being independent of delta V, right? It ended up being just a property of the material. So it was a property of, not the material, but I'll say of the object. And it's going to be the same thing here. The inductance is going to be just a property of the object. Once we get through this kind of calculation that we'll show for a solenoid how all of this cancels out and you end up something that only depends on the geometry. So it's a property of the object and it doesn't change with current. So even though it looks like it from the equation that it would change with current, just like capacitance doesn't actually change with voltage and how you use it, it's going to be the same idea here with inductance. So it's a property of the object. It's how much flux does it set up. And then, basically a higher L is something that sets up a bigger magnetic flux in that scenario, right? So a higher inductance is going to set up a bigger magnetic flux, and it's basically just going to be better at fighting the change, right? That's happening. So it's going to be able to set up a bigger magnetic flux. It's going to be better when we look at our next video of an RL circuit at fighting the change in flux, remember, because that's going to be what loops like to do in Faraday's law, that the lens part of that is they're going to try to fight the change. And so a higher inductor is just going to be able to be better at that. So now let's go ahead and just derive it for a solenoid. So let's do it for a solenoid. And this is really the only one that we derive it for because it has a uniform magnetic field inside of it. And so that just makes this derivation a lot easier. And so kind of knowing how to do this one is important. So for a solenoid, remember that the magnetic field inside of a solenoid is something that we have calculated, right? So this is the B inside a solenoid equals mu naught times the current times N over L. So that was going to be, for some solenoid, it had some length L, and it would have some current flowing through it. It would have some total number of turns, and then that would give us our magnetic field. And this was the magnetic field that was inside of it, right? So that was inside where it was a uniform magnetic field inside that solenoid. Perfect. So now we also have to define in our solenoid, let's say that we have, some area here. So let's give this an area A, that's like a cross-sectional area. And that's going to show up because we need to find our flux. So the magnetic flux inside a solenoid that has some current I is simply going to be equal to mu naught I N over L all times A. And that's because we can just note that the area and the B are in the same direction. And so the dot product goes away and it's just the cosine of 0. So now we're ready to define and find our inductance. So we would just say that this is going to be equal to, if we look at the equation for inductance and how it relates this flux to the current, we can start to see that this current is going to drop out. So I have here N and then times my flux, mu naught I N A over L, all divided by I. And so my inductance of a solenoid ends up simply being, I'm going to pull the mu naught out front. My I, very importantly, cancels now. And so I get a mu naught n squared. So it actually goes as the square of the number of turns times that cross-sectional area all over L. And so what I will do, just because I noticed here that I have two L's that are the different L's floating around, I'm going to change all of these. So everything that's the length of the solenoid is getting changed here. And so that's now my length of the solenoid, that is that curvy L. And again, this is a property of the object. It doesn't change with current. It depends only on how many turns there are, what's the cross-sectional area, and what's the length. That tells you how good of an inductor this solenoid is. Perfect. So now that we've defined inductance, we can also just relate it to Faraday's law. So let's go back to Faraday. So if we go back to Faraday's law, then we can say that the EMF, right, the EMF here is going to be equal to negative N times d flux dt. And so if we actually just use this definition of inductance that was up here, we could rewrite the magnetic flux as Li over N, right? So that's going to be our inductance. And again, it's a self-inductance here that we're working with. So that comes from our definition of inductance rearranged. I can now put this together and I get E equals negative N and then d dt of Li over N. And we then see that I get a different way of writing Faraday's law in terms of the inductance. I might get negative L times di dt, so that if I know the inductance, then that's a property of the material. It doesn't change with time. Then my induced EMF is a direct derivative of my current, which is kind of a nice, useful way to talk about this. This is so-called Henry's law, which is really just Faraday's law, but again, everybody gets a name in Module 10. So this is Henry's law, which is just a version of Faraday's law with the definition of inductance plugged in for it. All right, so that concludes our discussion of learning about the circuit element called inductors.